there's a difference between confidence and then seeing somebody else show you what is possible at the next level.
Yeah.
And so I might be really excited and go, I made $1 million a year. And then, that's a good reason to be proud. And then your friend goes, I did that yesterday.
Yeah.
And so then also, I wasn't, it's not that I wasn't confident, but I had just never thought about that because like it's pretty hard to imagine and daydream and pursue something that you don't know it exists.
Why do you think that, they are not teaching us? They don't teach us how to work with money.
I think because most people don't know themselves. I think there is some truth that the school system was set up, for a different purpose a long time ago. And that purpose a long time ago was largely to educate the next workforce and get people used to a workforce schedule. I don't necessarily think it was malicious and, like a trick to deceive the entire world. But I think, that's such a big thing that it's hard to change. And it's a thing that takes a long time to change and it's slow to change. Perry Belcher made a post. A lot of people know who Perry Belcher is. He's a marketer. And he said, who is masterful at SEO was his post. And if there were 100 comments, 50 of them were people tagging me. And so then I got a private message from somebody on Tony's team, and he said, hey, I'm the marketing director at Tony Robbins. I saw you tagged in that post. We just want to get to the best of the best. Are you taking on new clients? And at first I was like, this is not, he's not from Tony Robbins. And, I didn't say that, of course. And so I said, yeah, happy to help you. Here's my calendar. And then he booked a time, and it was Tony Robbins' team.
Yo, what's up everybody? Welcome back to Brainwashed To Be Broke series. Today's guest is someone who literally outranked $1 billion company on Google, and that was just the beginning. He's the founder of SEO National, author of the best-selling book Outrank, and for nearly 2 decades has helped entrepreneurs, NBA teams, and even Tony Robbins grow their visibility without spending a cent on ads. He's been featured in Entrepreneur, Forbes, BuzzFeed, and build a global team while still putting his family first and teaching others to do the same. Super stoked to have him here. Welcome to the show, Damon Burton. Did I said it correctly? Your surname?
That's great. Yeah.
Awesome.
Good to be here, Adam. Looking forward to talking.
Thank you so much for being here. It's just my honor to have you. I have prepared really great question for you, and I love to dive deep into stuff like SEO, like anything what you do. And but before we go to those questions and topics, I would love to, and probably all the listeners would love to hear where you're coming from, why you decided to go on the entrepreneurship journey, and how it actually even started for you.
So each of those has their own long story. So I will give you the short version of a few of them, and then you can tell me where you want to go further. I got into entrepreneurship kind of by accident, kind of on purpose. So
Wow.
I grew up, in a family that didn't have a lot of money, and my, parents were divorced, and then my mom married an alcoholic. And so kind of similar to what you were talking about before we hit record, I saw patterns that, I wanted to break. And so pretty early on, I decided, for me, it wasn't so much, how do I find success, but it was, how do I not repeat those problems? And then the opposite of those problems was financial stability and success. And so my biggest priority that started the journey was just to break patterns and have a stable household for, when I was like a teenager, I was thinking, how do I start planting the roots and the foundation for a stable family in the future? And then when it started to turn into kind of entrepreneurship, and which turned into SEO, was because I knew we didn't have a lot of money in the family, I would take advantage of using the computers at school. And so I would do like typing classes and just little things because I thought it was cool. And then because I took typing classes, then I learned word processing. And, everybody's familiar with that now, but that was new 25 years ago. And so because I learned word processing, then they came out with the very first HTML class. And so I had the opportunity to learn HTML by hand. And then when I went to college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I took general classes. And in the general classes, we had to build a website. And it was like, 50% of our grade or something big. And I got thinking about how much time I would spend on this project, knowing that at the end of the school year, they would just delete it and throw it all away. So I asked the professor if I could buy a domain and build my own website. And he said, yeah. And so that way I could keep it. And so I started a car enthusiast website. because in my 20s I was big into cars, and that car website started to take off, and I had a lot of active members, and so then that's when it kind of started. Entrepreneurship kind of started, where it was like, okay, how do I make this better? And so I started to learn design more, and how do I monetize this? And that's how I started to learn marketing. And then where I fully took the leap of faith in entrepreneurship is, I started doing design on the side, and then eventually I had a full-time job, and then that full-time job um, got raided and shut down by the local government. And people in the U.S. will be familiar with like the ATF and the FTC, and they're these big, scary governing bodies. And so at that moment, I had a choice to decide if I would see if the company would survive and I still had a job, or if I should go find a new job, or if I should bet on myself. And I decided to bet on myself. And, I lost 60% of my income because only 40% of it was my side clients. And I committed all my time to my side clients and made that income back in about 3 months because I could serve people better. It wasn't a ton of money back then, but it provided the opportunity to have flexibility and freedom. And then that was 18 years ago. And it's been a great journey since. And, now I do a few $1 million a year, I have a team of 40, and work with a lot of cool people.
That's amazing. That's awesome, awesome journey. I would like to go a little bit even like more in the beginning, because you started with that you basically been playing with computer and so on. Like, what did led you to actually start even with the computer? For example, for my young age, I was like, always outside playing, I don't know, football or doing these type of things. You've been always like, have you found it like for you something like there was a passion for that also? Like, was it?
Good question. So it's not like I was on the computer all the time. I was big into skateboarding when I was younger, so I was outdoors most of the time. But I just mean that I knew it was an opportunity that I wouldn't have at home, with computers. And so when I had access to it at school, it was something that I took advantage of.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, and during the time in school, um, have you been always had a lot of friends and or you've been always like on the side, like a little bit different and you've been always dreaming about something
Mm.
or you know what I mean?
Yeah, kind of a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
When I was younger, I was, uh, really skinny and really short. I didn't grow until my senior year of high school, and so I was always kind of the shortest in the group.
Right.
Um, I had a lot of friends because, I had a lot of friends. I had friends in the skateboarding groups because I would skate. I had friends, with the smart kids because I got good grades as well. And so I had lots of groups of friends. But yeah, I always felt a little different or alienated, and felt
Right.
like even though I had groups, I didn't know,
Mm-hmm.
I mostly hung out with my skateboarding friends,
Mm-hmm.
and that's mostly what I identified with. But I never felt like I totally fit in with any specific group.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what like how was the path for you from your parents? Like what they expected from you? Did they let you to be who you want to be, or did you have like some, way that you should go with, or you know what I
No,
mean?
I had nothing. I had
Nothing.
nothing. No. My so my parents divorced when I was two,
Mhm.
and I have a good relationship with my dad. I had a good relationship with my mom when I was younger. I don't have a relationship with her now. Um, and so uh I don't I never had a they never forced me in a specific direction.
Mhm.
It was me very early on, because I have a lot of brothers and sisters, and I'm the oldest.
All right.
And so the path that I took, I didn't realize a lot of this until retrospect, as you get
Mhm.
older. So I'm in my mid 40s. I think when you get in your 30s, you start to reflect back and start to connect a lot of dots, and you start to realize, different things in retrospect. And then in your 40s, you kind of recalibrate and better understand those things. So, at the time, I didn't realize why the path was becoming the path. But in retrospect, it was largely out of survival, I think,
Mhm. Mhm.
because it was survival for myself to get out of that toxic environment. But then also being the oldest of so many brothers and sisters,
Mhm.
I had a big responsibility that nobody gave me, but I think you just feel obligated as the oldest to protect your brothers and sisters too. And so a lot of my, what we'll call it, obsession with, you know, opportunities and positivity and breaking patterns came out of a survival.
Yeah, yeah. I felt that also because I'm the oldest. We are just the two, younger brother and me, and basically that was always like I was always looking, take care about him and so on. So if we are I don't know, 4 years distance between us. So, but it was really really great. Even though we really grew up in poor environment, but it was really great to have somebody as him, like a younger brother, that I we can actually like um we are really close together basically.
Yeah.
But what did parents um like what they told you that you decided to go actually with the entrepreneurship, because that's not the usual path from when you're coming from um from family that they are having not having background in entrepreneurship. Did you had some conversation with them, or they just supported you to?
Neither. We never had a conversation about it, and they didn't support me. I think my dad was always generally positive.
Mm,
He didn't understand it. He entrepreneurship was kind of new, and then entrepreneurship online is new, and so I don't think that he ever questioned it.
mhm,
It just was unfamiliar to him.
mhm,
My mom was probably the opposite.
mhm,
Part of the reason why I don't have a relationship with her is because she doesn't understand it, and she doesn't understand breaking chains, and she's still a victim mindset, and
mhm,
doesn't understand taking responsibility for where you're at. And we had a hard discussion one time, and I told her my feelings, and she disagreed, and uh,
yeah,
that was the end of it.
yeah, totally, because even for me it's not easy with my parents, for example, because I always, when I'm like with people around myself, um entrepreneurs, trying to be in that environment to just grow all the time, and then you coming, for example, visit, because we are living in different country, right? And when we coming back to just visit them, it's just like I've been there for 3 days, and then I have to took like 3 days of recovery for my brain to actually get back into that
Yeah,
same like
yeah.
flow, and everything was like it's just crazy. But anyway, yeah. So what is your opinion that have you been actually when you've been in school, have you been taught any time about money or how you should work with money, or why do you think that they are not teaching us? They don't teach us how to work with money.
I think because most people don't know themselves. It's I think there is some truth that the school system was set up, for a different purpose a long time ago. And that purpose a long time ago was largely to educate the next workforce and get people used to a workforce schedule. I
Mm-hmm.
don't necessarily think it was malicious
Mm-hmm.
and, like a trick to deceive the entire world. But I think, that's such a big thing that it's hard to change. And it's a thing that takes a long time to change, and it's slow to change. And I think technology and opportunities have evolved faster than that change can happen. And so it's created a big gap in economies and finances and understanding. I think that most discussions don't happen because the people that would provide those discussions don't even know themselves, and so I have three kids,
Mm-hmm.
and when I talk to my kids' teachers, and my oldest is in junior high school, and so they have career classes. There was one called CCA, Career and College Awareness.
Right.
Well, it was really just college awareness. There wasn't a career. And, the stuff that they would bring home. And, my kids see what I do, and my kids see entrepreneurship, and they see the cool things that I do and the cool people that I work with and the experiences that I create and the opportunities for us and the opportunities I create for other people. And they're starting to get old enough that they see how different our house is from other people.
Mhm.
I don't think they still fully understand it, but they know it enough to start to question how the rest of the world works. And so when my kid would bring home things about college, and he's like, Dad, I don't want to go to college. And I'm like, that's okay. And then so I talk about the advantages, the disadvantages of college versus entrepreneurship. And, I'm not going to tell my kid which path to go down. I can just educate them and let him decide. And,
When you're coming to that point, do you educate them differently than, for example, you've been educated when you was young age, in your young age, and you had to basically figure it out yourself? So do you apply those type of
Well,
things
I
that they
didn't
have?
have,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
I mean, I teach them based on the lessons that I know because I didn't have a lot of lessons when I was younger. And then certainly not about finances. And then even the lessons that are taught or that you can find online or through friends are largely inaccurate.
Hmm.
And so I learned a lot of valuable lessons just through perseverance and just having a gut feeling that there's a better way.
Mhm.
And so, when I talk to my kids about this, and then we go talk to, there's been times where I'll take this topic back to my kid, and then my kid will talk to their teachers, and their teachers either disagree or don't understand. And so, we try to have a communication about it, and then it comes back. And I've had to go into their schools and go, listen, I don't have a problem with college, but I have a problem with you saying that college is the only way. And so then I have to explain that we come from an entrepreneur family and there are many opportunities and it's not just one way. And I'm not saying that entrepreneurship is the best way for everybody, but it's important that people understand that there are different opportunities. So anytime I take those discussions back, I remember one teacher I had a discussion with where she was promoting college, which is fine. And then she starts talking about how her daughter is currently in college and is learning business. And that's where things started to fall apart for me because it's like I think it's you learn more and you learn faster doing business than learning business. And so, I listened to her and then I don't think she even noticed. I think here's the problem is people don't even notice how misinformed they are because then as she is trying to tell me a compelling reason why college is valuable, she begins to crap all over it without even realizing. And she starts to say how it was really complicated for her daughter to get in and she's struggling to pass it and the curriculum is inaccurate and outdated. And so like that was her argument while she was trying to tell me why it's amazing and how far her daughter is going to go without even realizing it subconsciously, she hates it and that there's all these problems and it's not going in the direction that she hoped it would go in.
Mhm.
And so I think people just hear so many things or there's just such a pattern in society that they don't even realize it's a pattern and they don't even realize that they're stuck in the pattern.
Mhm. Yeah, totally. When you lost your job after you finished your school, yeah, so when you start building websites and you basically um, went to the job and you lost the job, what actually like what been happening into your head when when you see that the path that they are selling to us when we are young, that the school is the safe path to actually go with that. Um, when you realize that this is not actually true and there is like a path that actually going to bring you much more freedom, support you in every way possible. What was your thoughts when that happened?
Well, when I lost my job, I tried to take a minute and pause and think about it without emotions. That's a scary position to be in, to lose your job. And so it's hard to not be emotional, but to make a better decision, you have to not be emotional. And so my wife and I were newly married. We didn't have any kids yet, but we knew we would have kids.
Mhm.
And so I started thinking about the future and I started thinking like, I lost most of my money,
Mhm.
but I still have some.
Mhm.
And then my wife also has a job. And so really it was just a question about math. And so I did the math and, we had a house payment, we had a car payment, and then we had, food. And so we didn't have anything bigger than that. And the decision was basically, can we still afford that stuff? And so, of course, we wouldn't have as much flexible money and money to go spend and disposable income, but we had enough that we could still pay our house payment, still pay our car payment, and still have food. And so for me, that sounded like probably the best calculated risk that I would have because as the more time goes on, the more responsibilities I'm going to have. Eventually, we're going to have kids. And that would have been a harder conversation for me to have with myself. Can I take that risk now? And so for me, it was worth the risk at the time to go, okay, the worst thing that can happen is we might get behind on a couple payments, but I can probably catch him up if I just go find another job. And so I took the risk.
Yeah. Did you have already like some type of experience in business at that time, or have you been studying already something, or you've been completely like just um been building the websites and designing them, and then when that happened, you basically been completely blank, like nothing what you could use to actually start a business that would actually help you to succeed on like online.
Yeah, I had very little. I had been doing website design for you know, f- uh, officially for maybe 2 years. And I had no entrepreneurship experience other than those side clients.
Mhm.
I had nobody in my family that was an entrepreneur. I had no mentors. I had no resources.
Hmm.
Now part of that was just like I said, other people don't know what they don't know. I also didn't know what I didn't know, and so I didn't know those were available, and I didn't know those were a thing, and so I didn't go look. And so a lot of it was just figuring it out on my own. The one thing that I did have was I always had enough patience. To be willing to figure it out.
Hmm.
And I think a problem with a lot of entrepreneurs are that they have a lack of patience,
Hmm.
and they also, they want $1 million tomorrow, and they want to just like copy and paste what somebody else did.
Yeah.
And so I always gave myself the freedom to if when I lost that job, it was doing design, it wasn't doing SEO. And so if you would have asked me, like the year before, hey, in 1 year you're going to lose your job and you're going to start a design company, and then about 18 months after that you're going to start an SEO company, and then you're going to do that SEO company for 20 years, I would have been like, what are you talking about? Like none of that would have made any sense to me. And so, but I never made myself feel guilty about not knowing the answers. I was okay not knowing the answers.
How did you get from from there being a web designer to actually going to CEO, and basically like this is completely different, like different topics kind of, like different skills also. How did you like what was the like how did you get bridging the gap into that?
Yeah, they're actually not too different of skills. So the
Okay.
way I got into it was one of my design clients asked me, what do I know about Google? And I said that I know enough that I can probably help you, but I don't know enough that I feel comfortable charging you money. And
Mhm.
so, but I also recognized that it was an opportunity. And so what I negotiated with them is I said, I don't know the answers, but I think I know where to start. So don't pay me anything unless I get you to page one. And then if I get you to page one, you owe me for all the time that I spent. And then you also start paying me monthly moving forward.
Mhm.
And so I was able to hit that goal in a couple months. So I worked for a couple months basically for free. But now the client was willing to say yes because they had no risk. It either nothing happened or they win. And then for me, it was I either learn and nothing happens, or I win. And so both of us ended up winning. And so I took that same negotiation to another client and I said, we just did this for these guys. Do you want to do the same thing? And because they had no risk, they said yes. It worked out for them. And 18 years later, I still have both of those two clients.
Wow.
So that's how I got into it. Now, as far as the different skill sets, the fundamentals of SEO require web design and development. And so like in addition to my agency, I teach other SEOs. And the first thing that I explain they have to learn is they have to go understand how websites built because you can't optimize a website unless you know how it's built and what you're touching.
Mm-hmm.
So a big part of SEO is understanding web design.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that I didn't know that actually. That's awesome. Um, so how did you like what was the way that you actually like start learning about SEO? Because it was, have you been reading some books, or have you like I don't know, like joined some courses or bought some courses to actually figure it out, or you've been just resourceful, or it was just the opportunity what you just shared basically with what they gave you, and how did you get into that actually?
I was all self-taught. Yeah. There, I would when I would start to understand a thing that I needed to learn, I'm sure I'd go look up a few things here and there, but I never took a course. I never followed a specific other SEO. And then the more advanced I got, I actually decided a long time ago to not follow other SEOs.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually just talking about this at an event yesterday. They were asking me who I follow, and I don't follow anybody. And there's a lot of great SEOs out there and a lot of marketers, but the problem with most of them are they're really good at marketing themselves. And so,
Mm-hmm.
they're really out not to educate, which is fine. Everybody has to make money. But when you're presenting information for the purpose of converting the reader into a customer, that's a different intention than educating and helping them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I made a decision a long time ago to not follow, SEOs. I don't go to other SEO events. And so when I started building out our processes and the team started growing and I created our documentation and then I wrote a book, all that stuff was stuff that
Been testing
the
all.
processes that we tested and we proved. And so that way I could put my name behind it and I could put my confidence behind it because it's stuff that we did, not stuff that somebody else told us to do.
Wow, that's really interesting. Uh, so what would you say to somebody who is, for example, trying to figure out SEO, and like how they would should start, what they would should start with?
So SEO is really just three things, and I can give some resources too. So SEO is one is how good or bad is your website built? So it's like the structure. And so this is where we talk about why design and development is important. And two is how good or bad is your content strategy? So your products or your services, Google's only going to position you for what Google can read and learn about your products and services. And then third is what I call external credibility. So do other people link to your website? Do they talk about your website? Do you have positive reviews? Are you in the press and publicity? And so when we talk about like structure, content, and credibility, where you get most of your traffic is from the second and third. It's from the content credibility. But this is why I was saying design and development is important because you can have really great content credibility, but if you have a poorly built website, it's going to dilute everything. And so you have to have a properly built, a properly structured website first, or else it just won't work. So, I encourage people to go learn about structure, and then after structure, then it's like, how do you write compelling content? Most importantly, how do you write content that educates? And so a problem with a lot of SEOs is they write content for SEO instead of
Mhm,
writing content for a reader. And so when I hire team members, I do not hire experienced SEOs because they have too many bad habits and I have to break all these bad habits.
mhm,
So when we hire like copywriters, I hire stay-at-home moms. I hire people that like creativity and like flexibility and want to be passionate about something and want to contribute to something.
mhm,
And for them, it's not about marketing. It's about telling a good story and writing a good piece of content.
mhm,
So focus on those three basics. And then, as these algorithms change over the years, I've never had a client get a penalty because they focus on those three core things and everybody else gets distracted with shiny objects and how do they game the system and how do they cut corners. And so when you focus on the fundamentals, then you don't have to worry about the algorithms. And all these SEOs that I teach, when I teach these other agency owners, the ones that get hurt by these penalties are the ones that tried to game the system and try to cut corners. And so it's really just those three fundamentals. And I can give away or you can get my book later. I give away my book for free, and that's an outline of my processes, and that's a great place to start. It walks through those three areas.
mhm. So when did actually happen and after how long you actually like started happening did you start seeing like a result and how did you get into like serving, for example, people like Tony Robbins and those well-known name everybody knows about them.
Yeah, so I have no lead generation. So I,
Mhm,
I run no paid ads. I have no paid funnel. I have no email list. And so it's just results and reputation.
mhm,
So you know, Russell Brunson came through. I'll give you how I worked with Russell, Tony, and then the Utah Jazz because those are big attractive names.
okay.
And so Russell, it was through relationships and masterminds. And so I joined his mastermind 4 years ago, Inner Circle, and then I gave a lot of value to the group. In giving value, then people start to understand who you are and how you can serve, and then you establish trust and relationships, and then so after a while, then Russell and his team would ask me questions and I'd just give them answers. I would not sell them. I would not ask them if they wanted a proposal. I would not ask them if I could do their SEO. I would just solve their problems.
Mhm,
And then, question every couple months turned into a question every couple weeks, and then every couple days, until eventually they said, you know what, I think it just makes more sense for us to start doing SEO together. So then we had one project and it went really well. And, he has a big staff and a lot of team members, and so it wasn't dealing directly with him, but it was dealing with his team. And because we delivered such a good product and good experience, then the good word goes up, and then you start to have good experiences and good reputation. And so then we got another project, and then another project, and then another project. So that's how we started working with Russell. The way that we got the the Utah Jazz retail store was through relationships and through serving again. And so you'll notice a pattern that with these really big people, it'd be really hard to start doing business with them by running paid ads because they're not sitting there looking at social media and seeing these ads. They're busy running like billion-dollar companies. And so you get access to quality clients that are looking for quality service providers through relationships and trust. So when we started working with the Jazz, it was a software company had asked for a meeting. And so I went to the meeting and had a lead, did the lead call. And then they happened to be local. Most of my clients are not local, but they were. And so I went and visited them in person. And then they called me about an hour later and they said, what's really interesting about having a meeting with you is not only did you tell us why we should work with you, you told us why we should not work with you. And so I told them all the disadvantages of SEO and I told them that it's slow and I told them that it's expensive. And all that's true. And,
mhm,
and so when you're transparent, then people trust you more. And
mhm,
so, um, they ended up signing up because of that trust. And then before we'd even started, they said, I want to introduce you to my neighbor. And their neighbor was working at a big law firm in Las Vegas.
Mhm.
Similar thing with him. Had a lead call, showed him the advantages of SEO, the disadvantages of SEO, earned his trust really quick, signed him up, and then he goes, "Hey, by the way, I'm the exiting vice president of retail sales at the Utah
Mhm.
Jazz.
Mhm.
My last responsibility is to find new marketing vendors. Would you like to do their SEO?" So from one lead call, just because I helped and gave value, and really because I didn't sell, I just helped them. I ended up getting three accounts off of one lead. Now, the way we started working with Tony Robbins was through reputation. And
Mhm.
so, like on social media, I only talk about SEO and entrepreneurship and my wife and kids. And, I don't talk about politics and I talk about religion. Like, I just talk about the things that I'm educated on and are important to me in my daily life. And so, because I'm consistent at what I talk about, then people start to go, Damon's the guy, Damon's the guy, Damon's the guy, Damon's for SEO, Damon's
Was
for
that
SEO. Damon.
also was that also before you start working with Russell, even with Russell? Like, how did you build that your name even came up to Russell? Like that you should be the guy who's going to run the CEO, the sale. So,
Uh, yeah, just talking about it. I mean, so because I was in the group,
mm,
so if you've been in a mastermind, like a high ticket mastermind,
okay,
so his
okay,
man,
yeah, okay, I got
yeah,
it. Yeah.
so we would just, help each other in a group. And so I was always just helping in my
How
expertise.
did you get into the mastermind? Have you already like you wanted to join that mastermind like from beginning, or have you been like,
Uh,
yeah,
yeah, so I had been looking for masterminds, but his is expensive. His is $50,000 a year. And I had not done a high ticket mastermind before. I had done low ticket masterminds
hmm
and they were a waste of my time. And so I had like I was turned off from masterminds because I had invested money and I didn't get a return. And then I had a friend that was in that world
hmm
of people that were around him. And so to be in Russell's mastermind, you have to do at least $1 million a year. And then, there's a couple different criterias. And so when it was at Russell's event, Funnel Hacking Live,
hmm
and my friend had what's called early access, and so he could go sit down early, and like he could go past this like invisible line, and so I didn't care about the early access. I just wanted to hang out with my friends, and so I knew a bunch of people that were over there, and so I went and asked the security. I said, can I pay for access?
hmm
And so I wasn't asking for anything for free. And they said, no, it's, you either have to be an award winner or you have to be in their
hmm
coaching program. So then I went and talked to somebody. They said, go talk to those people. And so I went and talked to these other people, and they said, yeah, you have to be an award winner or in coaching program. And so then they called over this other guy, and this other guy says, yeah, you're not going back there. You need to, they're right. You need to be in this. And he asked if I was interested in coaching. And I said, no, honestly not. And he says, what about a mastermind? And so then he starts telling me about the mastermind. And, that's why I was at the event, was to look for new opportunities to network and
Yeah,
grow.
yeah. Mm.
And so then all of a sudden he's like, it's $50,000. I was like, holy shit. Like,
Yeah, I can
and
imagine. Yeah. Well,
so, but it was a really short thought in my head
mhm,
because,
mhm.
that's where the reward is
How
taking.
did you actually even get in on that event? Like, did you know Russell before, or like he was the name already
No,
that you
I
know?
didn't know any. I mean, I knew his name and I knew what he did, but I didn't, we had never met or anything. I was familiar with his products. And, um, so,
Have you started with his books, or did you just literally just went on the on the on the event and then you joined the mastermind?
mostly the latter. Yeah. Like I had read Expert Secrets and .com Secrets the year before.
hmm
But I hadn't really started integrating anything from it.
hmm
And, so I mostly knew nothing and was like,
Wow.
I didn't have any mutual friends. I wasn't like, no. And so I just like went and paid for, for the top and just made the big jump. So, it was a short conversation in my head. It was only about 90 seconds where I thought about it. And I was thinking, well, this is why I'm here. I'm here to learn new things. I'm here to meet new people. And so I joined, and it was a big, you know, leap of faith.
Mhm.
And it's was and still is a great group.
Mhm.
I've learned a lot in it. I've got my money's returned from relationships and education and referrals, and and then I joined a bunch of other groups. I probably spent three or $400,000 in the last 4 years on masterminds, and his is the only one that I keep renewing because
Mhm.
of the
Mhm.
type of people that are in there and the quality of the education. And he's really good at organizing events. They're
Mhm.
really well managed. And so, And so that's how I got into that
Yeah, yeah,
world.
yeah.
And then, the last one, Tony, was because I just always talk about SEO. People tag me a lot, and
Mhm.
so anytime somebody else asks a question, I just get tagged a ton of times. And so Perry Belcher made a post. A lot of people know who Perry Belcher is. He's a
Yeah.
marketer, and he said, "Who is masterful at SEO?" was his post. And if there were 100 comments, 50 of them were people tagging me. And so then I got a private message from somebody on Tony's team, and he said, "Hey, I'm the marketing director at Tony Robbins.
Mhm.
I saw you tagged in that post. We just want to get to the best of the best. Are you taking on new clients?" And at first I was like, this is not, he's not from Tony Robbins. And, I didn't say that, of course. And so I said, yeah, happy to help you. Here's my calendar. And then he booked a time, and it was Tony Robbins' team. And those three things that I talked about structure, content, credibility, I walked through that with every lead, and the importance of those basics. And in doing that, I answered a lot of questions that they had, and they signed up that same day.
Mhm. Have you, when you jump into entrepreneurship and start, building this CEO, basically empire that you created, have you had to like, did you start with like mindset shifts and everything, like studying some type of mindset, or when you started? Because usually, the way that we are left from school or job is like, we are shaped into those boxes that keeps us to easy, like, think small. Don't, you share that. Did you
Mhm.
had to overcome some type of, um, objections or roadblocks in front of you with your mindset?
Yes and no. So I think I was so determined to find stability and peace that there was nothing anybody could say or do that would make me think that it was not possible.
Mm,
And so I think that helped a lot. The mindset, so the mindset of is it possible,
mhm,
I haven't had to struggle with, but
mhm,
where I have learned, especially being in these big masterminds,
mhm,
is what we call glass ceilings. And so like, you look up and you see a ceiling, and so you think that's your limit, but it's just a glass ceiling that you can break through.
mhm,
And so one thing that I have learned is even though I have confidence, there's a difference between confidence and then seeing somebody else show you what is possible at the next
right.
level.
Yeah.
And so I might be really excited and go, I made $1 million a year. And then, that's a good reason to be proud. And then your friend goes, I did that yesterday.
Yeah.
And so then also, I wasn't, it's not that I wasn't confident, but I had just never thought about that
Mhm,
because like it's pretty hard to imagine and daydream and pursue something that you don't know it
mhm,
exists.
mhm.
And so then all of a sudden you see something new that exists and you're like, oh my gosh. And then it just changes how you think about things.
Yeah. Totally. I see. Also, I see behind you. Are you playing on guitars, or you are like, yeah, do you like
No,
to? No, all right.
no, there's a
Because we've been
story though.
talking about creativity and stuff type of things, so it was like, I was like, actually, people like to, when they try to be creative, they play some music or they do some exercise and so on, and you've been saying that, you've been working with people, like especially for design, web design. This is one of the piece of actually building successfully this, um, the CEO basically. So I just been curious if you have some type of technique that you actually like, use for yourself to be more creative or something like that. Yeah.
No, no, but it's a great topic. So I'll answer the guitars in the background, and then I'll
Yeah.
answer your topic. So the guitars were because of COVID. So when I've been working at home almost the whole 18 years, and then when COVID happened, I didn't have to change anything. My team was already remote, and we already used Zoom, and um, but then, that first week of March of 2020 was then I had, one client cancel.
Mhm,
And then I had another one not cancel, but reduce their budget. And so I started to see this pattern that was unusual. And so then I thought, well, we're probably going to lose a couple more because everybody's scared. And, maybe I'll have time to learn guitar. And so then I bought the acoustic guitar. And then I was like, well, if I'm going to learn, then I'll buy the electric guitar too. And and then like the next week, all the guitars were sold out on Amazon because everybody else had the same idea. And so I got lucky because I went back and I was like, well, maybe I'll get this different one. And then all of a sudden they're all gone. And so that's why I bought them. But then the opposite happened. That first week was, we lost a client or two. and it got quiet and scary. But then business took off,
Mhm.
and so it did not get quieter. It got more busy.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, those guitars have sat there for 5 years now, and I have not made much progress. I,
Decoration.
yeah, but it's worth talking about though, because I think your point of creativity, for me, it's less about creativity and it's more about relaxing and slowing
Mhm.
down. That's a big thing I'm trying to figure out right now is, if you're in entrepreneurship for a long enough time, you forget how to slow down and you
Mhm.
forget, what life is like outside of
Mhm.
entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And so I've been really good about prioritizing my family and things like that. My wife and I have been together 21 years and we both love each other more than
Mhm.
ever. And, we got 3 kids with good relationships, but I've neglected myself.
Mhm.
And so now it's like, okay, I need to spend more time on Damon and, who is Damon outside of
Mhm.
father and a husband and entrepreneurship. So it's a good topic, it's something that's important. And so a lot of these other entrepreneurs that I teach and mentor, I tell them to figure that out before it's too late.
Mhm.
Figure out what you like to do outside of work now. So you have that you can leverage later because it's going to be really hard to do later.
Mhm. That's awesome. What is your take on and how do you think it's going to affect the situation with AI? Um, like the thing that you do.
Um, so it hasn't affected me, but it has affected a lot of others, and I think it depends on the type of clients you deal with.
Mhm.
So it probably affects smaller clients more. One, because usually smaller clients are less educated, and not in a rude way, but they're not as familiar with marketing and familiar with data and economics. Um, and then AI is just another search engine.
Mhm.
And so it still looks for the same things. It's going, what are websites that I can access easily and understand the navigation that has content that
Mhm.
is valuable, that has credibility that makes me trust it. And
Mhm.
so, the way you show up in AI is SEO.
Mhm.
And so, um, the more savvy clients understand that. And so we've seen some smaller clients think that SEO is dead, but then the bigger clients, we've seen an increase in bigger clients.
Mhm.
And then what's interesting is if you look at data, there's a couple slides I have from data sources, but the data shows that Google has not gotten smaller, they gotten bigger. And
Mhm.
so the last data study I read was ended in like 2024 and they grew by, I think it was 21.64%.
Mhm.
So not only did they grow a little, but they grew by a lot.
Mhm.
And then it also broke down the comparison of users on like ChatGPT
Mhm.
and buyer intent. And the majority of people that use ChatGPT, they don't use it for buying and consuming. They use it to write me text and make me an image.
Mhm.
And so the data showed something like 70% of the users are non-commercial users. So
Mhm.
only 30% of the users are commercial. And then it goes on to show the usage. And it said that, ChatGPT, at the time, it was either 30 or 50 million searches a day. And so it's
Mhm.
probably more now, but compared to, or no, it was 300 million searches a day compared to Google's 5 trillion.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so it's like, ChatGPT is great. It's had a huge adoption, but it's still such a small percentage of Google's market share. And it's not like Google's like it's not like Google's just gonna be like, oh, we lost and like walk away. And then the other thing is like Google is so integrated into our lives. They're integrated in your phones, they're integrated in your calendars. You use it for Google Voice,
Mhm.
YouTube. Like they have so much of a head start and so much more data that I don't think that SEO is going to die. It will just evolve. And I think it will become maybe a balance. I think SEO will come down a little bit,
Mhm.
and AI will eventually get enough,
Mhm.
of an increase that it takes some market share.
Mhm.
But I don't think it's going to go away because they're different user experiences. AI, you're largely looking for one answer.
Mhm.
And then with a traditional search, you're looking for multiple answers. You're
Mhm.
looking to compare, you're looking to research. So they're different user experiences. But let's say SEO does go away. How do you think AI works? And
Yeah,
so,
exactly. Yeah.
now the product just shifts to being reframed as AI optimization.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. I have a last question for you prepared, and that would be the wrap-up question. So, if this interview was the last you've ever done, what was the message you would want to leave behind you?
For the listening audience,
Listeners, your family, anybody.
for the listening audience, Everybody is wrong. Don't listen to anybody. Trust yourself and figure it out.
Amazing. Cool. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
Where people can find you, support you, connect with you. Um, yep.
Yeah, if you just go to damonburton.com, on there you can get that free book that I mentioned, and then you can also find out my social media channels.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here, dude. Means a lot. And for everybody who's listening, if this stirs something in you, don't ignore it. Share with someone who needs it. Subscribe, leave a review, and remember, you weren't born to follow the script. You weren't born to be free. Bye, everybody.